If you're thinking about buying a home along the Oregon coast in the spring or summer of 2025, I want to talk to you a little bit about the real estate market. Now, we've been hearing for the last couple of years that the market is dead. Well, I've got some data to show you otherwise. We're going to dig into the most recent data from our RMLS, and I'm going to show you what the market looks like not only right now, but what to expect in the next 3 to 6 months. What are going to be some of the contributing factors to the market that we're seeing right now, and what should you be watching out for? Again, if you're buying a home along the Oregon coast, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel Living on the Oregon Coast. I am your host, Seth Marchant, licensed real estate broker in Oregon and Washington. Or if you're new to this channel, Living on the Oregon Coast, we show you what it's like to eat, sleep, play, all the pros and cons of living on the Oregon Coast. We do these videos where we cover the market about once a quarter, but we've got over 100 videos on our channel of driving footage, drone footage, videos that are really going to get you acquainted with the area, videos like pros and cons of all the towns along the Oregon coast. So if you're not too familiar, if you want to get more familiar, if you want to know more about what it's like to live along the Oregon coast, make sure and subscribe to this channel. Now let's dig into some of the most recent data. All right, first we are going to start with the northern coastal counties. So that's Clatsop County, Tillamook County, and Lincoln County. So that's Astoria all the way down to Waldport. Places like Seaside in Astoria and Clatsop County, Cannon Beach, of course, one of the most popular towns along the Oregon coast. Tillamook County is going to be Manzanita all the way down to Pacific City. There's a lot in between there as well. And then Lincoln County, Lincoln City, Depot Bay, Newport, some of the more common ones you've heard of, and also includes Waldport and Yachats just south of Newport. So this is some pretty broad data. If you do want any data more specific to an area, you can always shoot me an email and I'll get you some additional data. Like I mentioned, we're seeing some things and that the market is really starting to pick up. So the biggest thing that we look at, the first thing is going to be inventory. You can see from the last 3 months, which these reports come out quarterly. So we're looking at the last 3 months, 8.9 months of inventory in January of 2025. That's the most that we've seen, I think, since I started making these videos, which is about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, along the Oregon coast, we are seasonal in Oregon. People do tend to move more when the weather is nice in the spring and the summertime. There's no exception to that along the Oregon coast. But one kind of difference along the Oregon coast that you might not find like in the valley in like Portland, Eugene, Salem, Corvallis, places like that, there's going to be a lot of second homes along the Oregon coast. You don't have that as much in the valley. And so when you hit the holiday season, December and January, in the valley, people tend to take their homes off the market because people don't want to move during the holiday season, whereas along the Oregon coast, maybe not so much. Like I said, a lot of second homes, so no reason to necessarily take the home off the market for December. So you can see inventory, as you can kind of see in this graph here, can tend to build up in the wintertime, although it is more common to see new listings towards the springtime. So looking at some of the most recent trends comparing March of 2025 to February of 2025, so just comparing the previous months, these are numbers I have not seen probably really anywhere in Oregon in the last 3 or 4 years. So new listings up 80%, and that's what we've been wanting to see for a long time, is we've been wanting to see sellers who have, there's a term called golden handcuffs. There's a lot of people throughout the country that have like a 3 or 4% interest rate. And I'll get to interest rates in just a moment. I'll show you what they're at and kind of talk about where they might be going. But there's a lot of people that have lower interest rates than what's available right now. And so for that reason, they don't want to sell their house and buy another house and trade a lower interest rate for a higher rate. So they call that the golden handcuffs. There's a lot of people that have been sitting in their homes for that reason. And so we've been waiting for new listings to start to come to the market. So new listings from February to March, up 80%. Now, pending sales is also up quite a bit, 36%, and closed sales 43%. But as you can see, it's not going to be outpacing the new listings. So hopefully that will help to continue to build up inventory. Now, I would imagine most people kind of know this, regardless of how closely you follow the market, but it's really largely been a seller's market all across the country. There's a few exceptions right now in some states and places like Florida and Texas, but for the most part in Oregon, pretty much everywhere, it's still a seller's market. They say about 6 months of inventory is kind of the difference between a buyer's and a seller's market. So being at 8.9 in January, 7.8, and then 6.2 in March, these numbers kind of dictate or indicate that it's leaning very heavily more towards a buyer's market. Now, despite that, we are still seeing competition, still seeing multiple offers in some places. And you see the average sale price up 4%. Now, sale price is not to be confused with home values. These things are sort of commensurate, and there's a high correlation between these things, but it might just also mean that people are spending more money. So average sale price could go up, even if home prices and even if home values aren't necessarily going up. Now, over the past couple of years, 2-3 years, since 2022, homes have kind of gone up 1 to 5%, depending on the area. We haven't seen anywhere in Oregon where homes are really going down. You might find some like pockets or neighborhoods in like places like Portland, but as a whole, particularly along the Oregon coast, everything is kind of stagnant to maybe up to 5% in some places. Now, if we compare to March of last year, which kind of makes it a little bit more interesting, because you're usually going to see a little bit of an uptick from a March of 25 to a February of 25, because like I said, it's still a little bit seasonal. You're going to see a little bit more activity when the weather starts to get a little bit nicer. But comparing to last year, March of 25 to March of 24, we're seeing 16.9% new listings up, pending sales up 18%, and closed sales up 31%, with the average sale price up almost 11% at 10.9%. So we're seeing a lot more market activity. Like I said, this is about as much activity as I have seen since I've been making these videos. So things are really starting to get interesting. And with some of the other market dynamics with the economy, you've probably heard about tariffs and interest rates. I'll get to some of those things in just a moment. That's making things even more dynamic. So I think sentiment right now, you're going to find a greater variation in sentiment. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller market? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy right now? You're going to find a lot more opinions on those things right now than you probably would have in the past couple of years. Now, if we look at the sale price percent change versus the previous 12 months, so average sale price change up 8.7% at $614,900. versus $565,500. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that home values went up 8%, but people might just be spending more money. And again, that's for Clatsop, Tillamook, and Lincoln County. Next, I'm going to take you down to Coos County. And before I do, I want to make the point too. One thing that's also a little bit unique about the Oregon coast is that about a quarter, something like 22, maybe 23% of transactions nationally are cash transactions. So people that are buying with cash aren't as impacted by interest rates, so they don't care about those things as much. I don't have data for the Oregon coast, but I suspect, at least anecdotally, that number is slightly higher because there's a lot of retirees moving to the Oregon coast. There's a lot of people buying second homes, investors. So you do tend to find more cash along the Oregon coast. So the Oregon coast isn't going to be affected by market conditions so much as the rest of the state or even the rest of the country would be. Now, this is interesting here with Coos County, which if you're not familiar with Coos County, that's where Coos Bay is, also North Bend. Those two towns combined give you about a population of about 25,000 people, which by far and away makes it the largest, most populous area along the Oregon coast. And although they're not quite to that 6-month mark, if we look at January of 2025, 5.7, so that's the largest number. So that's the most inventory that we've seen build up in Coos County, again, since I've been making these videos, or since we look back for 3 months in the RMLS. If we look at March versus February of this year, new listings also, there's so 23%. That's a big number. We just saw 80%. Don't want you to think, if you haven't seen these videos before, that's anything that's normal. 23% is also very good as well. Pending sales up 6%, closed sales up 14%, and average sale price actually down 10%. Again, not home values. These are sale prices. People might just be spending less money in these areas. Now, compared to last year, which is really, again, that's where it gets interesting, because we want to see where the market trend's really heading. You can look month over month, but we really can get a better indicator of where we're going when we look year over year. And we see year over year new listings up 17.5%, pending sales up, and then closed sales right at dead even. But the average sales price also down a little bit. If we look back at the past 12 months, average sale price change plus 5.4%, 374,000 versus 355,000. Now we're going to take you down to Curry County down to Brookings and Gold Beach. As you can see with Curry County, they have had some higher inventory in the past, almost 10 months back in November of 2023. So 9.2 months of inventory, 8.1, 7.7 for the last 3 months. Not anything necessarily abnormal, but pretty big uptick month over month from March to February. 50% new listings. So again, if these new listings, if those trends continue, we're going to really start to see inventory build up if sales cannot outpace those new listings. And that really is going to, again, it's going to lean it more heavily towards a buyer's market. Pending sales up 10%, closed sales up 20.8%, average sale price. Look at that. Plus 64%. Now, there's not a lot of transactions, not as many transactions in a Curry County. So it's not going to take too many transactions to maybe kind of skew some of this data. So that might be a little bit of what you're seeing. There are some pretty amazing homes in Curry County. So there are some like multi-7-figure homes in that area. So when you do have some of those transactions, it might skew some of that data. The average sale price change plus 3.5%, 481. 200 versus 465,100. So inventory is a big part of what's affecting our market, but let me show you what interest rates have looked like. If you recall last year, the Fed fund rate, the Fed's cut rates 3 times between like Q3 and Q4, once for half a point, the other 2 times for a quarter point. So for a full interest rate, a full point, the federal funds rate was cut. Now, mortgage rates don't exactly follow to the T the Fed funds rate. They tend to follow the 10-year treasury, which I'm going to get to here in just a moment. But what you'll see is we started to see that go down last year. Actually, this was, like I mentioned, this was before the Fed actually cut rates. We can see kind of back into Q2, almost back into Q1 of 2024. So we had rates kind of heading back down. And people were thinking maybe we're going to get back into the 5s. So we got down into the low 2s. And what happens is when rates come down like that, you'll see kind of into September of 2024, this is mortgage application data. We can see that with rates going down, mortgage applications went up. So a lot more people applying for mortgages when they see those rates coming down. And then we saw that again recently. So rates did come down all the way down to about 6.6% recently. And that caused a little spike in mortgage applications. So what that means to you, understanding what the market is there's been a lot more people that applied for mortgages in the past couple of months. So there's probably going to be more buyers out there out shopping. You might face a little bit more competition than you expected. But the good news is, like we saw, that there's going to be a lot more inventory. So more inventory to compete, so to offset maybe some of those buyers. And then, of course, we saw the big spike. I was actually so this week in our economy has been very interesting with the public equities, in other words, the stock market, and tariffs, which just got implemented last week. And that's what's causing some of these spikes here. That's what's causing this spike to go up right here. So mortgage rates tend to follow the 10-year treasury, and this is just the one day. Whoa, we're at 4.4. We were just under 3 not too long ago, actually, which is good for mortgage rates. You want this number to go down, and let me show you, if you want to be able to understand, let's go back a year, what mortgage rates are going to do. They do tend to follow more closely the 10-year treasury. So watch this. You see this graph right here. You'll notice that this graph very closely follows the 10-year, and there's that little spike right there. So we saw the 10-year get down to, what is it? I think it was down, at least momentarily, not by the end of business, not by the end of the day, but it was just under 3%. So we'll call it 4%. Now at 4.4%. So the reason why that is because people that buy mortgage-backed securities also buy the 10-year treasury. So these two things have to compete with each other. So when the yield is high in the 10-year treasury, mortgage rates have to also go up to compete with the 10-year. So we need this 10-year to come back down for mortgage rates to come back down. But suffice to say is there's going to be, over the next few months, there's going to be, with mortgage applications, there's going to be quite a few more buyers than there were, say, like in November, December, or January, for anybody that's maybe already been out there shopping. And there's a lot of different factors, and I'm not an economist, so I'm not an expert at these things, but I'm going to predict that the 10-year is going to come back down. Actually, I was going to shoot this video yesterday, which would have been really interesting because I was going to shoot it right before the 90-day pause on tariffs. So if you haven't followed, the United States is basically implementing tariffs on pretty much every country, supposedly as a negotiation tactic. And they were paused as of yesterday. And when they did, the stock market went way up. And that's another thing that we've been hearing too, is I have heard mostly from other brokers. I've heard from other brokers that the stock market recently going down has killed a lot of deals because there was somebody that was going to use something from their retirement fund or just something from their portfolio in the public equities to sell to then use for a cash payment or just a down payment on a home. And so I've heard from other brokers that the stock market recently going down has caused some people to now not want to buy a home. And what I was going to say yesterday is I do predict that will subside. I think it's a little bit more obvious today after we have the pause on tariffs and what that did to the stock market, that likely that will subside and some of those buyers are now going to come back. Good on you if you bought the dip in the stock market. It was probably one of the better times to buy in the last couple of decades. As long as things continue to, stabilize, a little bit, and we get a little bit less volatility and there's a little bit more predictability in the market, which hopefully that's what's going to come. So probably going to find, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, you're going to find a lot of different sentiments. People feel like it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market, it's a good time to buy, it's a bad time to buy. So definitely a confusing time for a lot of people. If you have questions about buying a home along the Oregon coast or what the market's going to do, what I think about particular neighborhoods, because a lot of the data that we're looking at, is a large sample size, data in the sample size of counties. And as they say, all real estate is local. Now, you buyers out there, you guys actually usually have a pretty good feel for the market, usually when you follow those websites like Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com. Whenever you follow a home or like on Zillow, you love a home or you favorite a home, then it sends you updates so you can see how quickly a home sells or goes pending. And that's a good, actually pretty accurate and a pretty good gauge for a lot of people. If you're following a lot of homes online somewhere on Zillow and those homes are going pending pretty quickly, then you're probably looking at a particular type of property in a particular area that has a lot of buyers and it's probably going to be competitive. A lot of the homes that you're looking at have been on the market for months or even hundreds of days, then you're probably not going to face too much competition. But if you want to talk to me about buying a home, want to talk about the market, really anything real estate related, I invite you to call, text, email. You can hit that QR code if you are watching from TV. That'll take you to our website where you can find all of our information and more. And of course, if you want to see more videos about what it's like to live along the Oregon coast, make sure and hit the subscribe button. Tap the bell. That way you'll get notified every time we drop a new video. And of course, again, you can visit our channel right now. We've got over 100 videos on our channel, like I said, covering all the major towns along the Oregon coast. If this video helped you, please give me a like. Lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and feel free to comment. Let us know what you think about the real estate market or your thoughts about moving to the Oregon coast. We'll reply back, and until next time, take care, everyone.